to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt, Jeff and Steve. Today we're talking about elements of truth.
Yes.
Now, this title works on a couple of different levels. Matt.
Yes.
So, what is the premise of today's podcast? What's your beef? What's your clarity? Or
it's not beef. Like, there's a lot of assumptions out there, and there's also a lot of ego and a lot of things where people don't want to show that they don't know everything. We're all guilty of it and that sort of stuff. So what we're doing in this forum, where no one's going to be embarrassed and no one's going to be feel silly for asking the embarrassing questions, we're going to go back to the basics of science and just give people a rundown of the basic science that's behind all of their supplementation and a lot of the claims that are made and a lot of the theories that we're seeing about sports supplementation. They use this basic science. So we're just going to give people a basic understanding of that so they know how to move forward into the elite level and also be able to pick out a couple of the confusions. We get a lot of weird questions through that have prompted it.
we do, and we get some great questions and we get some frustrating questions. I mean, again, especially when you feel like you've covered the ground, you've sort of, created the information, you've displayed where that information has come from in terms of reports or in terms of, studies or what may be, especially some of the big peer-reviewed ones as well too, like the Cochrane journals and stuff, which should then, not saying I hate to say the word because I don't believe in it, the science is settled, but as far as information is concerned, it's the most up-to-date, it's the most reliable, and until someone can actually challenge that thesis or that understanding with new information, then that should stand.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we're doing today is taking it back a whole level again.
And what I was going to say is that three of us are at the table and all of us are at different levels. I'm not a scientist. I've never worked in that. I have an interest in the field. I sold supplements for a long time and I was passionate about understanding as much as I could, but I didn't have the capacity to learn anything other than more than learn by what I call learn by rope or by parrot, which means I have a sort of an understanding, but I didn't have the understanding of hormone and energy pathways in the body. I mean, as far as the Krebs cycle, I knew what it was, but I couldn't explain the whole process and the whole cascade of events. And I think sometimes, Matt, obviously that's a limiting factor because I can't defend an argument, and so I just go, well, I know this is true as far as what I've understood, but I couldn't explain it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like you might, in a brochure for a product or something, they might talk about its ability to build protein or muscle mass.
Sure.
And they may relate that to nitrogen retention.
Yeah.
And you go, so because of the nitrogen retention of this, it shows that we build muscle. So today we're going to tell you exactly what nitrogen retention is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then it makes sense. And then we can understand too how people might be able to use these words to induce a sale, but in reality, it can explain why you don't get the results.
Well, it's tricky, eh?
Well, the way I look at it is, okay, you take protein, you work out at the gym, you build muscle. I think everybody who goes to the gym or sells supplements has a basic understanding. I can jump in my car downstairs, turn the key on because I put petrol in there. I can drive. I know to push the accelerator. I know how to push the brake, but I couldn't tell you how a combustion engine works.
Well, what about what we're going to do
bet
today?
you
chemist.
But what about today? We're also going to show. So you said you eat protein, you get nitrogen in your body, and that says that you're building muscle. And you get in your car and you've got a petrol that runs. Yep. If some people have got a car where they put nitrous into their engine and the car takes off.
Right.
So we're going to talk about nitrogen as well today and talk about all of those sort of aspects with nitric oxide, nitrogen retention, nitrogen in your car.
Yeah,
and that sort of stuff. But we're really going to go through that basic sort of stuff and answer some of these questions that we've been getting.
You take cars, for example, and I was talking with the staff out there yesterday, and I was talking about, you heard spark plugs in cars. They're not in every car. They're not in diesels, for example. And I said, how does the diesel ignite if there's no spark plug? And I said, just as a general science question, they didn't know. And they didn't know that when you pressurise a gas, it heats up so much that it explodes the diesel with the oxygen. That's called Boyle's law and Charles' law, gas laws of chemistry. So a lot of people don't know that octane reacts with oxygen to form water and carbon dioxide, and that's how a car runs. It gives off energy. And so all this sort of stuff is this base understanding that mostly you don't really need to know about how a car runs or how a diesel ignites, but it's good too.
Well, when it's really good to know is when things aren't working properly.
Exactly.
That's when you call in the mechanic, right?
Yes.
So that's the person with the understanding of the systems, of the process, of how things interrelate, and looking at things at a holistic point of view most of the time. Same thing with the body as well too.
Absolutely.
To get peak performance in a race car, you've got mechanics that are working on that, tweaking things, and same with people with the body as well too. And a lot of the time people stumble onto good results. A lot of times people are working with coaches that really know their stuff, or with people, but whether you're a lay person just looking to lose a few kilos, or you're somebody who's elite, who's professional sportsman or woman getting on stage to compete, or playing football, whatever it may be at a high level. Everybody wants to get the best return on their investment of time, energy, effort, money, everything else. Yeah. So therefore, this is the podcast to really go back, have a look at maybe some of those basic things that maybe you think that you know, or maybe you know that you don't know that you should know, which might actually be able to help you to improve.
Exactly.
Yeah. And anyone out there that we don't answer your questions today, please, if you've got a science question that you're too embarrassed to ask someone because they're assuming you should know this, send it through to us. We make it anonymous, we answer it, and we'll answer it in full detail.
I've got that's great because I've got this little problem with my
science question.
Yeah, okay, right. It is science. It's
not gravity question.
That thing's not science. That's freaky.
It's science fiction, isn't it?
Yes.
Science fiction.
It's an alien movie.
It looks like a rat got a hold of it and bit half of it off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's quite funny because in chemistry there are double meanings, with lots of things like we just talked about then, of course.
Yeah,
like
his
organic.
Old fella, he thinks there's something impressive. It's something scary.
If I put my chemist hat on, guess what organic
Leaves
means?
an impression.
Stop banging against things.
It leaves things a couple of different levels. I like that.
Anyway,
it's like
you were saying something adult. Go back to Steve-O's.
Adult.
Sorry,
Oh, well, that'll be me. What does organic mean?
Well, I was going to ask you this, Master Segway.
Oh.
You are an organic chemist, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I was a
so
chemist,
that would therefore make you a fantastic organic farmer.
Yeah, it would.
First thing I want to just talk about now, let's talk about some science, because today what we're going to talk about is organic chemistry. So we're going to talk about biochemistry, just organic chemistry, and understanding where that sits and
Chemistry
the definitions of that stuff. Put your chemistry hat on.
Yep.
Take off your certified organic farming hat.
Right, okay, that's gone.
Because we need to explain to people first and foremost, they may have been too embarrassed to ask this question to someone once or look into it, but organic farming, or the word organic when it comes to farming, has nothing to do with the word organic when it comes to chemistry.
It's absolutely the opposite, actually.
Yeah. Why the hell did they choose that bloody word to talk about farming?
You got to remember, I started off life as a chemist, so my hat was chemistry, and organic in chemistry means it's got carbon in it.
Yeah.
So, for example, water is inorganic.
Yeah, according to
Oxygen
chemistry.
is inorganic.
Yeah. But in organic
Deodorant,
farming, if you don't have water and oxygen...
Deodorant or glyphosate is organic. In fact, they call them organochlorides.
So plastic's organic.
Plastic's organic.
So when you do certified organic farming...
Yeah.
So with certified organic farming, all of the substances that are banned in regards to organic farming. Or organic produce and that sort of stuff are actually organic when it comes to organic chemistry.
Absolutely, 100%.
But we're not
water is inorganic, so you're not
crazy.
allowed to put inorganic substances on your farming. You can't water the crops.
Yeah. So we just need, for starters, so when we're talking today and we're talking about organic chemistry, we're not talking about organic farming.
Yes.
We're not talking about whether something's made synthetically. Now, when something's made synthetically, that can be using organic material from an organic farm.
Mostly is.
And it can make an inorganic mineral.
Yeah.
Or an inorganic product can be made from organic material off an organic farm. This is where it gets really confusing for people, that we sudden this word organic, depending on the words that are around it, totally changes its meaning.
Yeah.
So organic in chemistry we're going to talk about today. Certified organic farming basically means don't put crap on your food.
Yeah.
It's when a word has a double meaning. I forget, there's quite a few, but minute and minute, I think they're spelt the same way, but that's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's not get
No
into
matter
that.
how many minutes you combine, it's not going to make a big one.
Yeah, no, that's right.
It's crazy because organic is obviously something that has carbon.
Yeah.
So water, salt.
So now
oxygen.
organic chemistry. So let's
Yes.
forget about certified organic farming from the rest of the thing. There's no more organic agriculture and that sort of stuff. We're now talking about organic chemistry.
Yes.
Revolving around carbons.
Carbon.
Yeah.
Carbon,
Go for it.
and life is made from carbon. A lot of things are carbon. They're called we're carbon-based life forms because we contain carbon.
Great band, by the way.
Is that a band?
It is carbon-based life forms. They've got an amazing album that I listen to all the time. That is the best thing for sleeping. I listen to it on the plane all the time.
That's
Yeah,
cool,
good
mate.
plug for a band, an older band. But man, if you're
I'm
interested
into
in
old bands.
mate, and they're, when I say old, 2008, I think this album came out.
Shit.
So,
Oh, no, man. Yeah.
But
I
anyway,
stopped
it's a great
finding new music at the 90s.
It's really cool music if you just want to chill out and relax and sleep. I listen to it all the time on the plane. They've got one called I forget what the bloody thing is, but it's awesome.
Amazing.
So what we're talking about, organic chemistry.
Carbon, yeah.
Based on carbon. Now, I remember what really excited me about chemistry as a kid is I made a volcano.
Hang on. Something excited you about chemistry as a kid?
Everything did.
Wow.
Well, I was an excitable kid. Yeah. But, yeah, man, love that shit.
Yeah, I love chemistry.
But we made volcanoes, and we got bicarb and we got acid, and they fizzed. That was my introduction to chemistry. So we may as well start there because that one basic experiment is something that we'll see on a daily basis. And when we talk about sports supplementation, acid-base interactions, which is what we're talking about, fizzing, overflowing volcanoes, is the basis of most of the, not most, but a lot of the sports supplementation.
Absolutely.
So tell us, Steve, why does it fizz?
When you fizz, you add a powder called a carbonate, and it's usually sodium bicarbonate. You've heard of that? That stuff you clean the oven with, or you put in cakes to make them rise and all this sort of stuff. Sodium bicarbonate, anything with a carbonate, CO3, if you want to get chemical, adds with an acid, forms water and carbon dioxide.
Righto.
And a salt, but forget the salt. So carbon dioxide is that fizzy gas.
Yep.
So if it's trapped under liquid, it bubbles.
Yep.
Simple as that. You know, like the soft drinks is pressurized with carbon dioxide gas, and then you open it and the pressure releases and you get bubbly.
So you're talking about acid combined
Vinegar,
with a base.
say.
A base is another word for alkaline,
Yes.
just for those people. So base and alkaline's the same. So we'll use those
Exactly.
interchangeably. So inside your body, if I build up a heap of acid from my training, I naturally have bicarb inside me.
You do?
Do I bubble?
No, you don't bubble
So where's my carbon dioxide go?
because your carbon dioxide goes
Out your lungs.
So you breathe
out
it
your
out.
lungs, and that's where carbon dioxide is given off.
Yep.
You take in oxygen,
Yep.
you give it a carbon, and it comes out as carbon dioxide. The plant takes the carbon dioxide in most of the time during the day.
During the day. I'm
During
so
the day,
glad you mentioned that.
A lot of people think it happens all the time. It's weird.
Yeah.
But it takes in carbon dioxide, spits out oxygen, and that's called photosynthesis.
Yeah.
So making something from light. So
And then the evil bastards at night start destroying
trees.
our greenhouse or making a greenhouse.
making
And then
greenhouse
destroying
gas.
us by stealing all of our oxygen because at night with no sun they switch to respiration.
Yeah.
They feed on oxygen and pump out carbon dioxide, contributing to the world's downfall.
But it's true. I mean, photosynthesis means photo means light. For those
So
who-
I keep a plant in my room because I like it, and then at night when I'm sleeping I take it out because of the suffocating bastards trying to get me when I sleep. My wife tries to poison me with my meals and then puts a plant in my room to choke me at night.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? It's so that's where the carbon dioxide thing comes in.
So-
And so we have a great acid-based regulatory system in our body, and we can pee out acid too.
So basically, the funny thing is, I don't know if people have seen it, there's a lot of studies now talking about supplementation of sodium bicarbonate. So taking bicarb as a pre-workout, so people are loading up with that. Now, when you take something orally, you go into your mouth, through your throat, into your stomach, okay, which is a giant pit of acid, according to a little bicarb molecule. Oh, a giant pit of acid. So when someone takes bicarb, the bicarb interacts with the hydrochloric acid in the stomach.
Yes.
That's going to make water and carbon dioxide.
Yes.
So that bloats, that fizzes, and that can cause some bloating.
And you burp.
If you see the studies on bicarb, what they do is they start off with like 1 or 2 teaspoons of sodium bicarbonate. About 1 teaspoon of sodium bicarbonate is enough to neutralize a lot of your stomach acid. Then what happens is, so basically the sodium bicarbonate interacts with the hydrogen in the hydrochloric acid, fizzes, bloats you up, and neutralizes the acid. Anything on top of that is excessive dosing and can get absorbed into your body, adding to your bicarb pool. So when you make up acid as part of your exercise, this bicarb then can buffer it and make carbon dioxide, which you can then pant out.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the plan. Man, the doses that they use of this sodium bicarbonate as a pre-workout, they start off at about a teaspoon, which is enough to buffer the acid. They go up to 150 grams, which is a lot.
A lot of sodium too, by the way.
That's half a cup. That's over half a cup of sodium bicarbonate. And that's to actually saturate your body with these alkaline salts to actually buffer your acid as the acid's made.
And sodium is an alkalizing mineral as well.
Yep.
There's in the periodic table. Has anyone seen these sorts of? I'm going to call it a castle-shaped thing, and this is called.
I'm going to call it
periodic
a
table.
castle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Castle.
Bloody
Well, this is
Queenslander.
our castle, and it's a periodic table,
Yep.
and all the elements are on there. And
Except the element of
oh,
surprise!
Jesus!
Oh, that's terrible.
That was the element of surprise I just threw in there for you.
Jeez, thanks for that.
You, Steve, but that's how
Now this, people have seen this and go, what the hell, why are they arranged like that? Well, they're arranged in groups and the groups go downwards, and all these on these sides are the alkalizing minerals down here in this group, and these are the acid-forming minerals down this side.
For people on the podcast, Steve, that are hearing you saying this, that's not helping them a lot.
No,
but
it's not.
We'll put up a table on the website so you can have a look. And Steve was basically saying the ones on the left are alkalizing, and the ones on the other side are
acid forming. So the great thing about that is, and they're actually called the alkali earth.
So
metals.
magnesium's alkalizing.
Yes.
Sodium's alkalizing,
Yes.
potassium's
Yes.
alkalizing.
Calcium.
Now, when you combine those with something, so with your magnesium itself and that are alkalizing because they will buffer acid.
Yes.
When you combine them to a citrate.
Yes.
Okay, so when you use something like a magnesium citrate.
Yes.
So with a magnesium citrate, we've got the magnesium element that's going to have a buffering effect. Mm-hmm. When you eat it, so it's a powder because we need to make it a powder. You can't just have free-floating magnesium.
No, because that's
unless
metal.
It's dissolved. So basically, you get magnesium citrate so we can deliver it in a powder format and make sure it stays stable and all that sort of stuff. Then what we do is when you eat it, it dissociates in your stomach, makes magnesium, which you absorb and use as magnesium.
Yep.
And then it also makes citric acid.
Yeah.
Now, citric acid is an acid, but it's alkalizing.
Yeah.
Can you explain how this acid makes your body more alkaline?
It's to do...
And why it is going to kill us all if we touch it. No, sorry.
That's
I'll
a
get
loaded
back to
question.
that. I'll get back to
citric
I'll get
acid.
back to killing your pets later.
Yeah, please do, because I'm interested in that.
Yeah, that arsehole
all right,
cat.
firstly, magnesium is what they call a cat ion, just going on thing. It's called a cation or a positive mineral. I'm just trying to play the word on the cat. So
Don't wait till he talks about anions.
Yeah.
I'm an.
And anion is a negative ion, and the negative ions are acid forming, and the positive cations. So citrate, when it gets absorbed, or citric acid goes in your body, acids it can be, it goes into a pit of acid anyway. So forget the acid part.
Yep.
The citrate's absorbed. Citrate can then take on a H or an acid from somewhere. So it's a buffer. If it can take on an acid, it's a buffer. So that's what a buffer is. A buffer resists the change in pH in the body. So it can take on an acid.
Yep.
And so it is actually alkalizing because it takes on acid.
So the citric acid comes in and it will take on an acid,
Yeah,
take that
because
acid
the
out
acid,
of your body,
because the acid goes past
and
your
make
stomach.
carbon dioxide and water?
Yeah.
It's the
And
same pattern.
It just buffers it. So
How does magnesium get rid of acid?
sure, magnesium. If you ever seen a water molecule, it's shaped like a V. Oh God, I can't.
Not really.
You haven't seen a water
Just
molecule?
this is what I see water molecules as, this
It's got
clear liquid.
an
on
oxygen
the
at
top.
one end and hydrogen's in the shape of a V.
Yep.
Okay. So at one end, the oxygen's actually slightly more negative. And that's why it sticks together in a cup. It doesn't evaporate into the atmosphere because that sticks together. Now that means it's polar. It means it's got a positive and a negative end. So it's got poles like the Earth. Okay, so it sticks together like a magnet, negative, positive, whatever you want to look at it. And if you put a positive ion in it, it arranges the water molecules so the water molecules can give off an OH minus.
Yep.
And if it gives off an OH minus and you add that with a H plus, do the sums, it ends up as H2O. It neutralizes the acid.
Yeah, right. So
Simple.
we can take on another hydrogen.
Yeah, which of course is the
Which is your
definition of a
positive,
base.
which is your acid.
And no, that's how all cations work, or positive minerals.
Now,
or,
speaking of cats, I'm pulling out the segue.
yes,
nice.
If you
Citric
want to
acid.
kill a cat,
Yeah.
feed it fruit salad.
yeah, okay. Well, get a pan for that one.
It probably won't eat it because it's smart. Smarter than the people that make memes.
Yeah.
There's basically...
I love meme science.
I love meme
It's
science.
where I go
Hilarious.
to get all my information.
So basically, we've talked about this previously, but someone embarrassingly made a comment once that humans shouldn't touch citrates because it kills them, because they killed their cat. No, I think I made that bit up. But
Yeah.
basically,
I was gonna say, I don't
animal
remember that.
studies, so cats, dogs, mice, they don't eat fruit.
Yeah.
They don't need to eat fruit. They can make vitamin C and they can generate their own citric acid. What they can't do is process citric acid that they orally take. So, I've got a whole list here that we'll provide of things that will kill pets. It's fun.
Onions. I mean, I think a lot of people
Chocolate,
know onions will kill
chocolate,
dogs.
onions. So there's certain things that they can't eat that we can eat.
Yeah.
So we have an ability in our liver to actually process the citric acid and turn this citric acid into an alkalizing agent that our body uses. Not only that, but the cool thing about citrates forms of minerals is the citric acid, as it's liberated, can actually contribute to the active transport pumps in the cells of your gut and help the absorption. So we can fuel the absorption of nutrients and that sort of stuff through the citric acid cycle. And then those citrates then go to the liver and they can alkalize the body.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool.
And this is basic science where people miss out on it is they forget that the Krebs cycle, which most people have heard of, I think, I don't know, is also called the citric acid cycle. So how bad can citric acid be if we used it in every single cell in our body?
Yeah.
It's
And the
a little
main
bit
difference is
basic
compared
science.
to us is that we can tolerate it orally, where other animals that have developed this ability to generate their own vitamin C's and things like that, they don't need it and they can't tolerate it.
I think I asked you if you've ever drunk a glass of orange juice. You said yes, and that's got about 12 grams of citric acid in it. So you're dead.
Yeah.
You didn't really.
The other
drink
thing,
orange
while we're
juice.
talking about citrates and meme science, there was this. It was actually my wife asked me. She says, "What is this evil black mold feeding on genetically modified stuff that makes citrates? I thought it came from fruit." And so apparently, there's some memes out there that are basically saying that when you see citric acid in a product, you've got to avoid it like the plague. They try to trick us into thinking it's something from citrus fruits. It's found in citrus fruits. It's not their most efficient way to get it. Sometimes it's easier to make it in a lab. But basically, most of these minerals these days can be made in the lab with purity, better than what you can actually get out of the fruits, because they're all loaded up with pesticide residues and everything. So if you want a nice, pure base compound to use within a science experiment, you're better off, in many cases, making it yourself. Now, citric acid is made by bugs. So certain bugs excrete citric acid after they eat certain foods. So the whole thing is when you make a citrate or a citric acid, you have the option of using genetically modified substrates or food sources and genetically modified yeasts and bugs, or you can go and ask the suppliers that we don't like that. We like to use natural sugars, naturally found from non-GMO stuff, and we like to use the natural non-mutated freaky bugs to make our citric acid. And you can then go and do that, and you can get it 100% purity and that sort of stuff. So just when you read these memes, of course, it's like, they talk about that black mold. So they're basically saying that when you take citric acid, it's made by the same black mold that killed that Hollywood lady.
And her husband.
Brittany
Murphy.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
they're talking about like this black mold that's taken over the world. It's going to be the new asbestos, and now it's out there used to make this thing, and it's like
Citric acid.
it's just weird, man. But basically,
So the truth is that it's a natural mold that is fed a natural compound, which then provides
Natural
the
bacteria,
byproduct.
yeah.
So when our magnesium citrate, the people that make our magnesium citrate, they actually get magnesium oxide out of limestone, and then they make the citric acid. They make the citric acid out of non-GMO and all natural stuff to make pure citric acid that then interacts with the magnesium carbonate from limestone to make magnesium citrate.
Yeah, right.
It's all natural and it's all from nature. The only thing we don't do is squeeze citric acid out of fruit peels.
And what would be a byproduct of that reaction?
Which reaction?
The one you just mentioned.
Carbon dioxide and water?
Carbon dioxide
Without
and
even
water.
looking or thinking.
There you go.
It's a
So-
common trend. So this is this whole carbon dioxide water aspect. So it's really important when you see these big doses of bicarb stuff and you do all these people. Now also have a look in your product, because there's also a lot of people that actually blend bicarb powder in with citric acid powders in the product. And what actually happens when you add a bit of water and mix them together, they will fizz up in the bottle, but you've kind of deactivated the nutrients in the process and convert them to carbon dioxide and water. So you've got to be really conscious of seeing if you're mixing too many acid and bases
A
together.
lot of, like there is a famous vitamin, synthetic vitamin that adds those two ingredients, I won't mention any names, that you put into water and it fizzes up, and it's a large tablet, orange
yeah.
flavoured.
Wow.
And so that's how they do it. Because you've got to remember, you need water as a medium, they call it a medium, to react the acid with the base or the carbonate with
So
the
a lot
acid.
of these things, when you see things like in a magnesium citrate form, the reason why we do that is because we've got to turn it to a powder to give it to you. Like, we can't just give you these pure magnesium because you can't. It's got to be in
metal.
something. Yeah, it's got to be
like
suspended
that.
in something. Yeah. So now we've just talked about citrates and that sort of stuff, and we talked about acid and bases. You mentioned the periodic table.
I did mention it.
Where does nitrogen sit on it?
Nitrogen is in group 5.
Because nitrogen is
Which
bloody...
is acidic.
It's acid forming.
Nitrogen, I find the most misunderstood molecule in the world.
It's great.
Because people talk more about nitrogen than anything else. They utilize supplements to drive nitrogen. So they talk about nitrogen retention means that you're holding protein in your body, which means it must be muscle. We'll talk about the other things that can hold nitrogen in your body, that when you interpret a study on protein and it says nitrogen retention was superior on here, and then people automatically make the assumption that that means muscle. It's not necessarily the case. It could be ammonia and other wastes that are held up. Ammonia, so we'll talk about nitrogen retention. Then, of course, we've got nitric oxide vasodilators and then all the precursors. Everyone's like talking about nitric oxide and that. And then we'll relate it to the difference, because then people go, so what's the same? What's liquid nitrogen that we freeze things, and what's in my car, and what's laughing gas? See all these nitrogens everywhere. 80% of our air around us is nitrogen.
Yep.
So do we really need to eat protein? Or can I get nitrogen retention from breathing?
No. Well, you can if certain plants do, but some plants need to eat protein as well. Like the Venus flytrap gets its nitrogen from flies, but a lot of plants get it off out of the atmosphere, but humans can't. It's what they term an inert gas, and the chemical formula is N2. The nitrogen retention in the body is an interesting one, because I used to mark my students wrong when they said nitrogen retention, because nitrogen is N2.
Yep.
And there's no gas retention in your body.
Yeah,
so
right.
I'd mark them wrong.
Yeah, good
I
work.
said it's an ammonium ion. Yeah, no, that's because NH4 plus.
Yeah.
It's not nitrogen retention.
No. So what is it? What do we retain? So when we get nitrogen retention, what does nitrogen retention mean?
Ammonium.
So it means you've got ammonium in your body.
Ammonium ion, the
Ammonium
NH4
ion.
plus ion, yeah.
So where is that? Is that muscle?
Yeah, it's found in amino acids, because
Yeah.
it has an amine group, which is an NH3 group, and you acidify that to NH4, because amino acid is just an amine group with an acid group on the other end.
So
And all the rest middle bit's different.
So that acid group might be a nitrogen-based acid, or it might be a sulfur-based acid. And that's a
Carboxylic
difference
acid.
between a... So, for example, let's arginine. Okay,
Yes.
so while we're talking about amino acids, arginine is famous for two main things. Precursor to nitric oxide,
Yep.
as a vasodilator, nitric oxide, but also it's also famous for nitrogen retention. I said it believes it contributes to more nitrogen retention than any other aminos. Does
Why?
it just contain more nitrogen
It
than
just
other
does.
aminos?
It has 4 molecules of nitrogen per atom. So that's a lot of nitrogen for the amino acid.
Most-
Every amino acid has a nitrogen in it, because amino is NH3,
Yep.
an amine group.
Yep.
That's where we get the name from. But this one has 4 total. So it's got a huge amount of nitrogen in it, which means it can be used for other things in the body.
So the reason why arginine is so famous for this
That's
is
all.
because of the nitrogen in its molecular structure.
Yeah.
But there are so many other variables, because we're going to talk a little bit about nitric oxide for vasodilation and
Yes.
all the different types of it that can happen.
Tons of it.
And then but what about waste ammonia? So if someone's accumulating a lot of ammonia as a metabolic waste from poor energy, incomplete combustion and shit in the
much-
carby,
yep.
or eating too many nitrogen-containing amino acids,
Yeah, well,
contributes to ammonia accumulation.
Well, all amino acids contribute to ammonia, because amino means amine, and if you acidify it, just add a H plus, it turns to NH4 plus.
So in a study, when it says we've got this much nitrogen retention showing that this product was superior to that product for muscle growth based on nitrogen retention, you'd mark them wrong anyway, because
I'd
they
mark
use the
them
wrong
wrong 'cause
words.
But
what are they talking about? That nitrogen retention, that's partly nitrogen found in amino acids in muscles. What about the nitrogen found in... Where else nitrogen? Is
Everywhere.
That's the ammonia waste that we're trying to excrete via the kidneys as
exactly.
well.
And
Or that smell you get.
Yep.
So if you're doing this thing and the studies show that it contributes a lot to nitrogen retention, and next thing you know, you're not looking like Mr. Muscle, you're smelling like Mr. Muscle. That was a really good joke.
That's
Mr.
actually pretty
Muscle
good.
is an ammonia-based product, a cleaning agent.
That's excellent.
Now, that was
actually
bloody
well
funny,
done.
wasn't it?
That was
Hey?
funny.
Oh, that just come to me
And,
just
and
then.
normally in 99% of people, they have a cycle called the urea cycle, and
Yep.
it just gets rid of the excess ammonia, no problem at all.
If it's not working effectively, they stink.
Yes.
They smell like ammonia. It's a very common cause for aggression. And when
Yes.
people used to come in, especially teenagers, they used to come into my naturopath clinic and they'd say, oh, they're really getting a lot of trouble at school. And you could smell the ammonia on them. And you go, man, this kid's got ammonia toxicity.
Yeah.
Makes
Is it
them
a nerve
confused and
cycle?
angry and irritable and frustrated.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
but you can imagine with bodybuilders and that too, that might be...
Chemically enhanced.
I was about to say pushing themselves to the extremes.
Yeah.
Take over consuming protein.
And look, the thing is, I always say as well too, in
And roid
defense,
rage.
well, in defense of the chemically enhanced guys, is that I always say, if you're an asshole before, you're just going to be a bigger asshole afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, this roid rage thing, I think sometimes gets out of skew. There's only a couple of times where there's a chemical pathway that goes down with too much DHT and other things like that.
And the amounts of hormones aren't as important as the ratios between them. So you
course.
could have a person with a low hormone load, but too much DHT.
Exactly.
And obviously an accumulation of ammonia,
Because
and they're the biggest arsehole on earth.
Because does the ammonia irritate the nerves? Is that
Yes.
what it's doing?
It's a
It's
direct nerve
neurotoxic
irritant.
as well.
So again, you're looking at a perfect little trap here. A little perfect
tell you
little
what
chemical
makes
trap.
it worse.
A couple of different things coming into line.
While we're
Yes.
talking about ammonia and irritability, in the clinic, what you do, if you see this stinkiness and this bad behaviour, you cut back on glutamine, which sounds weird. Cut back on glutamine, because when you get ammonia and you use glutamine, it drives it down a glutamic acid pathway. The glutamine actually works as an irritant with the ammonia. And what you want to do is supplement with glycine. So when you actually supplement with a lot of glycine, the glycine helps to calm down the GABA receptors and work with it. So dodge the glutamine and load up on glycine, and that really does help the ammonia.
Because you've got to remember, the ammonia acid, the NH4 plus, can donate one of those H pluses to glutamate and call it glutamic acid. That's how the chemistry of it works.
There you go.
If you want to know.
And
I did want to know. That's the
There
whole
you go.
point.
It's also got a
And that was
relation.
another thing I assumed I did know. And I
There you go.
didn't. Yeah.
But it's also got a relationship with flavour enhancers like MSG and other things like that as well too, doesn't it? Glutamic acid.
Yeah.
Glutamic
MSG
acid.
is monosodium glutamate.
And do you know why that
They
does
replace
that?
the
Why?
acid with
Because
Because
it
it's
irritates the nerves.
on the tongue.
And if you irritate the
everywhere
nerves
else.
on the tongue,
Yep.
they heighten their sensitivity.
There
They're
you
more
go.
That's exactly
irritated
how it
by,
works.
and they pick up on the flavour easier.
And you've got
you
sodium
heighten the
retention.
nerves in your brain, and you pick up on idiots more. You heighten the nerves in other, like in your skin, and all of a sudden you're feeling the fan
Yep.
blow it on the hair, or it's just irritated. You get these nerves like ants crawling under you.
And the sodium contributes to the salt component. So it's a very good flavour enhancer. I mean, yeah, it's not that great for you, but it enhances flavours dramatically because of
Delicious.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's found in nature too, by the way. It's a natural molecule. It's an organic molecule.
Well, that's the funny thing. So,
Thanks,
I'm
Steve.
glad you said one of the questions we got the other day. These are the
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of questions we get. This person wrote in and says, saying we're terrible because they thought we were all clean and neat, and here we are using inorganic chemicals, and we claim to be organic. We don't claim to be organic, and that's too different. Anyway, let's just not talk about that. I'm going to get cranky. He said anything that ends in ATE is synthetic. Now,
wow.
so you have a look at monosodium glutamate that we talked about adding to MSG to your foods. Parmesan cheese naturally is 50% glutamate. We're just
That's why it's got such
liberating
strong
glutamates
flavour
and
and-
of course flavor enhancer and that sort of stuff. Just answer that, Steve. Anything ending in ATE, it has to be synthetic, doesn't it?
I think Kate might
it's a
take a
classic
position.
example of, unfortunately, people not understanding chemistry. They call suffix in chemistry the last part of the word. It's probably an English word. I was terrible at English, but good at chemistry. So I related to chemistry. The last part of the chemical word. And when you name a chemical, it means something in the name, like amino acid means there's an amine group and an acid group.
Yep.
You know, anything with ate on the end of it could mean lots of things. It could be a base pair. In other words, if you take an acid off a base, it becomes an ate, like citrate.
Yep. Or
Instead of
ose, ribose,
Ribose.
sucrose,
Yeah,
sugar.
well, oses means sugars.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So there's glucose,
Yep.
sucrose, maltose, blah blah blah. So there's all these sort of
ONE's ketone.
ketones.
So when
They're
you
the
see
ketone groups.
acetones and
Yep.
all those sort of
and
things.
the most important one is the OL at the end, which is alcohols like
Yep.
ethanol, methanol,
Yep.
propanol, butanol.
Yep. Why
you
is
know.
that the most important?
Just
Yeah, I was going to say.
I was just trying to crack a
That's
joke.
funny.
It didn't work. But, you know, all these ending things mean something, but they don't mean organic or inorganic. The only thing organic means it's got carbon in it. It's totally different.
Yeah.
If it's
and
got
that,
carbon,
and again, just back to
Like
that doesn't
cyanide.
mean we're evil because
cyanide is an organic molecule.
yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
CN minus.
But I eat cyanide all the time because
Yeah.
I eat the seeds in my apples.
Isothiocyanate. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's actually so you know these sort of naming of chemicals is a completely different world to what and that's why my students used to get absolutely peeved with me because I was a stickler for them getting it right because if they're going to teach someone about health and it's biochemistry in the body, they're going to know it. The average person who takes a supplement, I don't care if they get if they say I've got nitrogen retention, I don't say, sorry, it's actually ammonium, the mineral, not nitrogen retention, because the nitrogen retention, you don't retain nitrogen.
No,
you
you get beat up, Steve.
yeah, I'll get beat up. So,
So then, okay, so nitrates,
Yes.
synthetically formed, bullshit. No, they're not. Nitrates is what we actually find in our food.
Yeah.
That's in our fruit and our vegetables.
They're good for you.
Beetroot's a good source of it.
Exactly. Beetroot. And I tell you how it's
Kale.
really cool. One of the ways that the nitrate gets into our plants, so our air is 80% nitrogen. Lightning can liberate, ionize that, and then the nitrogen goes into the rain and everything. When the lightning hits the ground and all this sort of stuff's happening, it liberates all the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and drives it into the soil.
Get out.
Yeah, and
Really?
then the other way of getting nitrogen in the soil, because there's a lot in there already, but if you've overused the soil and you've sucked all the good stuff out of it, they often grow like legumes, for example. They'll cycle their crop with something like soybeans, and then there's another reason why there's a lot of soybeans growing around the world. But they put the soybeans in, they grow it, and they got really long roots. And they drag the nitrogen from deep down up to the surface and then just plough them through to allow that nitrogen to build up. So when you grow your plants, that goes into the plants as nitrates. Now, I'm going to tell you something really cool.
Okay.
So when you eat these nitrates, they can form nitric oxide. So
It's
you eat nitrates.
NO for that chemical.
Yeah, so nitrates go to NO, and nitric oxide's a vasodilator. But your bacteria in your mucus, the main place where your nitrates are stored in your body is in your saliva. The reason why I'm telling you this, it's kind of cool because we talk about this science and we say it's like a mathematical equation where we can make carbon dioxide and water and we just add this and that, and it's pretty bloody obvious. In the human body, these things are so bloody different because it depends on priorities. Now, let's have a look at the conversion of nitrates to nitric oxide. First of all, and nitrate is NO3.
NO3 minus.
NO3 minus.
It's a mineral. It's an anion.
Yeah, so nitrate, NO3 minus, it actually gets converted to nitrite,
Yep.
NO2 minus.
Yes. Loses an oxygen somewhere.
So it loses an oxygen, and that's done by the bacteria.
Yeah.
And the bacteria hold the nitrite in your spit, in your saliva, mainly in your mouth, and in stomach mainly. They're the two places mainly it's found. Somehow, your little toe might be struggling to get adequate circulation. It sends a message to somehow tells the bacteria to convert that nitrite back into nitrate to put it into your bloodstream. No, the other way around. So nitrite goes into the bloodstream to make nitric oxide. The bacteria in your spit determine whether you get nitric oxide in your arteries to go to your circulation. That is absolutely freaky. So I might be able to say, yeah, I can do all these sort of supplement this, supplement that. But if you've got the wrong bacteria, they won't let it happen. They even did that study with beetroot where they made people drink the beetroot juice, measured all the nitrites and that in the spit, used an antibacterial mouthwash, and the vasodilating effects of beetroot disappeared. Without the bacteria to make the conversion, those dietary nitrates could not work.
Can I give you a science question now based on it? Are those bacteria aerobic or anaerobic? Have a guess. If they use the oxygen from the nitrates.
Well, you would suggest they're aerobic.
Aerobic, correct.
Yeah.
See how you lead people? That's exactly correct.
And this is with science how it gets so confusing. Like,
so it's the aerobic
I remember,
bacteria.
now
Yes.
I did grade 8 science at school, and they told me oil rig.
What?
They said oil rig, Steve, and I've never forgot oil rig.
That's pretty
Oxidation is losing.
Electrons.
Reduction is gain. That's not part of oil rig, Steve. They taught me oxidation is losing and reduction is gaining.
They forgot them.
What are we gaining and losing? Because if it's gone from NO3 minus to NO2 minus and reduction is gaining, what's it gained?
What's it gain? No, it's lost something. What's it lost?
Oxygen.
It's lost an oxygen.
Exactly. So,
but oxidation is losing.
losing electrons. They forgot to tell you the last bit. Also, oxidation is losing, using up oxygen. And that's why you correctly point out it was an aerobic bacteria that does it, because they use air, O2 or O. So they can use that. And that's why they're very important bacteria in our mouth, the aerobic bacteria.
Yep.
And a lot of people use, and I hate it, antibacterial washes and stuff
What about
all
the
the time.
toothpaste ads?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go through and make your teeth red to
to
show that you're full of mouth bugs.
It's like,
Man, I haven't seen that ad for a while, but I remember that really well.
Everyone remembers it. It's just like they do this visual thing. Your mouth is full of bacteria. We must kill them. They are going to rot your teeth.
Well,
no, have you noticed they're coating all over the teeth?
Yeah.
What are they? If they're good bacteria,
What are they
that's
doing?
kind of cool, man.
Well, it is good, but it's funny because we went to the dentist yesterday and Tony came away and go, oh my gosh, the girl behind the reception desk had the most beautiful teeth, but she goes, they were like fluorescent white.
White, yeah.
She said the amount of bleach that she must be using on her teeth, and she goes, what impact do you think that would have in the body? And I said, well, it can't be good. I don't know.
not.
I mean, like the amount of bleach that they must be consuming, you know, those little mouth guard things for beautiful teeth. What's that doing to
The body.
the digestive tract?
They
What's
don't
it doing to
care
the
is the
stomach?
answer because dentists don't care about that. They just care about what happens here and what happens there is someone
Yeah.
else's problem. That's where we fell for the fluoride trick.
Yeah, exactly. And also, don't. The funny thing is they can put stuff in oral products. If there's an instruction to gargle and then spit it out, then it's not oral consumption. They can put stuff in it that doesn't have to be safe for food because there's no
That's right.
absorption out of the mouth, of course.
But no, and there's never been any time where I've ever brushed my teeth where I haven't actually ingested a small amount of that toothpaste. It doesn't happen.
No.
Well,
Ever.
I struggle. Like sometimes I have a lolly. I just hold that in my mouth and it just somehow disappears. I don't know where it's gone. It's probably been absorbed into my body.
It's a magic trick.
They can put something inside your body and say it's not going to be absorbed. But then they can make medical troches and lozenges, and then we know if you suck on a lolly, you're going to get the sugar.
No, so if you went to a hospital and you're having a heart attack, they'll give you a little tablet, a nitrous tablet under the mouth to stop you dying of a heart attack, right? What the hell does that do to stop you dying
Makes you
from a heart attack?
explode.
You know, so isn't that interesting?
Isn't it nitroglycerin?
It's nitroglycerin.
How does it work?
So it provides nitric oxide, a vasodilator, to dilate the blood vessels in your arteries, in your heart, to give your heart blood so you don't die.
Well, that's super
That's how it
cool.
works.
I heard, off topic a little bit, but on that topic,
Yeah.
that if you use, is it capsicum as well too for someone who's having a heart attack, or some really hot chili or something, that also seems to have a really powerful effect on preventing.
Vasodilator, absolutely. It would,
Best thing you can do
absolutely.
is cough.
And you know that a lot of people are using
You
those
sit there and
nitro.
go,
Yeah, push
you
on the
give yourself
diaphragm.
compression. So if you think you're having a heart attack, just sit there and go on the way to the hospital.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
Just because your heart could be into AF or atrial fibrillation. I won't get techo, but that can resolve that with the diaphragm.
Cayenne pepper.
Yes,
Is that the one?
it's a vasodilator, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
So
It
yeah,
protects-
nitric oxide does the vasodilation.
Right.
So in the body, arginine is famous for being a precursor to nitric oxide because of the nitrogen content of arginine.
Right.
Huge.
So arginine gets converted, the nitrogen's released, nitric oxide. The byproduct of that citrulline, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
But now, so that nitric oxide, let me tell you, we had a really cool question before. We had someone saying, oh man, I'm using this product, it should help. It's contributing to my fluid retention. Why is that? What we've got to understand is nitric oxide is a vasodilator and an on switch or an activator for many cycles. So we have lots of different forms of enzymes in our body that will determine whether those nitrates are good or bad. So if you've got the wrong process happening in your body, for example, if you've got an inflammatory process happening, if you have an injury, then you have this thing called inducible nitric oxide synthase, which is your body upregulating these enzymes to make nitric oxide a powerful vasodilator to make your injury swell. That's how you dilate the blood vessels and send. And when they tell you to take ice for an injury, it's actually to constrict the blood vessels that have been opened up by nitric oxide, contributing to the swelling and the inflammation and the pain. Again, with strokes and brain damage from those sort of things, you get a section of the brain that doesn't have enough oxygen. You'll get this inducible nitric oxide synthase to dilate the blood vessels into that area. That's what causes a lot of the actual damage and that sort of stuff associated with a brain injury. Migraines, for example, if you've got this process and then you use a vasodilator or you throw in a nitrite from a preserved meat or that sort of stuff, these nitrites that come through, and so they include things like sodium nitrite that is now popping up in a lot of sports supplements. So keep an eye out for things like sodium nitrite
They
as a
cause stomach
vasodilator.
cancer.
Not only do they cause stomach cancer and all that sort of stuff, they
Yeah,
can
but-
contribute directly to migraines and that sort of stuff. And they don't work effectively for muscular pump because they're just providing a precursor that can be used for any form of vasodilation. And if your body is in a bad process, like we make a product, Prototype 8, that's got the arginine that works transdermally. If you actually have an injury, you know, we've even had some people there that have used it for a pump and they've just had an old injury, and in that area it aggravates the swelling and the inflammation because of the powerful vasodilator nature of that product. But yeah, so you've got inducible nitric oxide synthase that makes aggravates injuries, makes things worse, contributes to migraines. You have neuronal nitric oxide synthase. That's the nerves. So that's the nerves using that to stimulate a thought or a process associated with anxiety. But that also controls your neuromuscular junctions. So the neuronal nitric oxide synthase can control your coordination and stimulate muscle contractions, but it's also associated with throbbing and that sort of stuff in the arteries, or the sweats. You know, people get the meat sweats. The meat sweats. So if you eat too much preserved meats or you eat too much meats and that, you get these nitrite sweats, and it can even contribute to migraines. So people call hot dog headaches. You ever heard people talk about the hot dog from preserved meats and they go and get these headaches and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, just to clarify that, they put nitrates in meat to keep them red, okay, because they are a reducing agent. In other words, they're an antioxidant, but they reduce. So a reducing agent keeps the meat very, very red. Oxidized meat turns that off browny colour, and it doesn't look good. But actually, if you ever seen meat at a butcher where the outside's red and the inside's a bit browner, have you ever seen that where they've pulled some? That's because the spray nitrates on it to keep the meat red, so people buy it.
Yeah, wow.
You actually want to buy the brown meat. That's why, because the sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrates are 150 is a preservative, and it does cause DNA changes in the gut where it thinks, so it does cause gastric
It's very powerful antimicrobial because it oxidizes anything it touches.
Yeah, but would it give me a 2% increase on my bench?
No. I don't think it would, mate. 1%. It'll give you the sweats. It'll give you the meat sweats, possibly a headache and a flushing heart. But it doesn't actually fit into the endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which is where I was getting to. That's the one in our arteries that drives nitric oxide for vasodilation.
And you've got different types of endothelium throughout the body, and there's different drugs that target different parts of the body. This is
why nature's cool. If you use things like citrulline, so citrulline's a state. So citrulline can be a precursor to the nitric oxide, but it doesn't directly go in and cause a nitric oxide release like arginine does. So citrulline can float around your body and then be converted through as needed. The nitrates from the foods and that sort of stuff, like the beetroots and your cherries and all that sort of stuff, that can live in your mucosa. And when your body wants it, it can take it, as opposed to just throwing in things like sodium nitrites or arginines that have an indiscriminate ability to convert to nitric oxide and cause vasodilation. The coolest thing is with the natural body, we can actually manipulate things. Like we can use herbs along with our precursors to actually manipulate which parts of the body dilate. For example, herbs like gynostemma, which we love and don't actually have in one of our products at the moment.
True.
Gynostemma is really cool because it's an anti-inflammatory, and as an anti-inflammatory, it's been shown to inhibit inducible nitric oxide synthase, meaning it can inhibit the use of nitric oxide to aggravate inflammation, and it can upregulate endothelial nitric oxide and neuronal nitric oxide. So we can that way get the neuromuscular neuromuscular junctions under control and our vasodilation without aggravating an injury. Like that's cool.
That is cool. Actually,
that's
funny, just talking about doctor signatures as well too. You look at both beetroot and cherries. I mean, like that's the deepest, reddest flesh that you can possibly get.
Yeah, and then he's just saying it makes meat red. So is that linked, or is that?
Oh, it's because of the oligoproanthocyanidins in there, which is an antioxidant. Because when you oxidize nitric oxide, you form the peroxynitrite radical, which is an extraordinarily damaging one. So that's how those things.
The peroxynitrite, that's in stuff, isn't it?
Oh, some stuff that you don't want to eat. It's a very dangerous free radical. Right. It's like free radical on steroids. It's quite a bad one. Yeah. It causes apoptosis or cell death in anything that it touches. Whoa. It's like the touch of death. Jeez. And if you oxidize with superoxide, which is another free radical, nitric oxide, it turns into peroxynitrite free radical, and it's really dangerous. That's why superoxide dismutase, which gets rid of superoxide,
which is made on zinc and copper,
and manganese, is an absolutely fantastic protection, and why you have to keep those minerals up to protect your body. Because people used to write in the exams, and again, sorry, but they'd write zinc is an antioxidant, and I'd mark them wrong. Because I say zinc.
Here's a bar.
You know why though?
Because
if they fail, they've got to pay him and do the course again.
Yes.
But anyway,
it's technically not correct.
How do you sleep at night?
What
on
do you think
a pile of money
and
women.
On women, really? That's not what I heard. But
not anymore.
On his bed with a pile of money and beautiful ladies.
Beautiful ladies.
And his cat.
It's your cat, mate. Everybody knows.
So we've got nitrogen is N2. That's what's found in the air.
Yes.
That's what's in the oxygen. That's what 80% of our lungs is full of.
Goes in and out, yeah.
Hey, and that's what, if you got a lung full of nitrogen, which we all do, 80% of it, and you go underwater far enough, there's enough pressure that makes the nitrogen this is my explanation.
Yeah, go for
Correct
it.
me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Makes the big bubbles little bubbles, small enough to get into your bloodstream.
So the bends.
And then as you come back up and the pressure reduces, those little bubbles form big bubbles, but they're already in your bloodstream, and you get bloodstream full of bubbles, and that's called the bends.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's exactly right.
Exactly
Jeff.
right. So you've got to
Does the
descend.
bends always end in death?
No. You go
Put
into
you
a recompression chamber.
hyperbaric
That's right.
chamber.
Yeah. Well,
So
not
they
a
take you and put you
hyperbaric.
back under pressure, don't they?
Hypobaric.
It's funny.
Pressure
Don't they
down.
push your
Yeah,
pressure back
they
up
put a lot of
high
pressure in
and
there,
then
yeah.
gradually
That's right.
release the pressure. So that's why also to prevent the bends, especially if you're dying and think you're drowning, it's a good idea to stop halfway up and just sit there for a while, wait for your blood to it, because your blood's always circulating,
And while
then
you're
it'll
getting
go back through, and then you can come up. That's why you got to come up really slowly to avoid the
A
bends.
lot
Gasping
of
for breath.
A lot of
That's
people
the
die
hardest
of shark attacks because they get attacked and they swim to the surface really fast and die of the bends.
yeah.
Because they go, will I hang around here with the 5 metre great white shark, or will I swim really fast to the surface and
And
get
take
on the
my
boat?
chances.
And they die.
Yeah, and then they look like a struggling fish on the surface.
Yeah.
So they
the
normally
sharks
go
come
around in
and nail
circles.
'em.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that with the bends? They swim in circles.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, just go up slowly.
Yeah.
Or they stop certain
Like
periods.
Def Leppard's drummer.
Oh,
What?
he's pretty harmless. Don't pick on him.
Oh,
That was clever. He's got one arm.
terrible. I know he's only got one arm. It's horrible.
Swimmer in
I
circles.
really like Def Leppard.
I do too. Yeah,
Not as
amazing.
much
drum.
as me, obviously.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Take that back.
That's terrible,
You
isn't
can
it?
have it.
But there's lots of other forms of nitrogen. What are the stuff your nitrous
So we've got
in your
nitrate.
car?
So nitrogen. So we've got nitrate, which is NO3. That's
Yep.
the one in foods. It's
NO3
converted
minus,
to
yep.
nitrite, which is NO3. Sorry,
NO2.
NO2 minus.
Yep.
Stupid words. Nitrous.
Yeah.
N2O.
N2O.
So that's
the cool stuff.
That's what. Tell us about that.
Well, if you go to the dentist and you get some, quote, nitrous gas,
Yeah.
that's what it is. It gives you a sense of euphoria, increases GABAergic receptors, dissociation.
So you get this massive. So when you do nitrous, the hospitals and that, I honestly thought the only reason why it was good, because it's bloody horrible. I thought the nausea and the dizziness was enough to make you forget about the pain.
Yeah.
But it also has GABAergic effects, which is a relaxant on
yeah,
our nerves.
Yeah, it's mildly
Reduces the
analgesic.
signals.
Can I give you a bit of history from
And they get a massive
1799?
dopamine surge, and
Yes.
that makes you feel a little bit euphoric with it.
Can I give you
stewy.
a history lesson from 1799? It was the first recreational drug used by the British aristocracy because they'd breathe it at parties and everyone would just laugh at each other. That was a party drug.
How
Cool.
do they make it?
It was easy. You just there's plenty of oxygen, plenty of
Yeah,
nitrogen
yeah.
around. You can chemically make them very easily.
Yeah, righto.
It's cheap and easy to make, and so everyone was using it. It was
Yeah.
only used in anaesthetics in 1844.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it was
wow.
around for nearly half a century before they went,
As
actually.
a recreational drug
let's
before
stop.
they said, "Oh man, I feel no pain on this party."
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
just ripped my tooth out. I didn't even know.
Do you want to know the story behind that? It was used by circus performers where they'd breathe it in and go absolutely nuts and everyone would laugh at them. And one time a circus performer ran into something, gashed his leg open, didn't feel it, and a doctor noticed it. And that's how it was used. And then it was used by famously, or made famous by Linton, who was the famous surgeon.
Yeah.
I tell you, the story of Linton's terrible.
Oh, that's brilliant. Tell us this story.
This is
This is
horrible.
a good story.
I'm not picking on surgeons here, but it holds the Guinness World Record for the greatest percentage of mortality from one surgery. It was a 300% mortality rate.
He
In other
killed
words,
3 people in one surgery.
What he did was he was famous for cutting people's legs off quickly. I know it's gross. I'm sorry, but he could, so no one
was
believed him.
Jaws.
Yeah.
And
so-
he cut it off so
And he only could only do 100%.
supporting hands that were holding him, the other person down.
Yep,
No,
pretty
don't-
much.
don't spoil it. This is great.
He cut the leg off in 2.5 minutes, correct. But in the process of the speed, he accidentally cut the fingers of the assistant holding the leg because the guy was squirming, and the guy got gangrene and died. The guy who got the leg cut off died of blood loss, and the blood that splattered into the front row, some guy got so freaked out he died of a heart attack.
Well done.
That's what you
And
get
he was
for
the
going
first-
to a football stadium to watch an amputation.
He was famous, and he was the first one to
they
operate
used to do
under
messed up
anaesthetic.
stuff,
And
eh?
he used ether, which is a more powerful gas.
Oh, yeah?
A liquid ether to put people right under. But before that, it was nitrous. It was like
Yeah.
suck on this and hope for the best, because it's not really an anaesthetic.
I've heard that before.
And they
she
said
did
here
well.
and sniff on this ether at the same time. Go to your happy
Bill
place.
Cosby
You're going
used
to love
to say,
this.
yeah. Oh dear. No Bill Cosby jokes. But so this
they'll wake
nitrous
up.
stuff is pretty cool. And now of course the Hoons put in their cover because N2O has got more oxygen than
So hang on. So don't rush. So we got
Okay.
N2O,
Yeah.
is that's the
Oh, I
pain
haven't finished with
reliever.
N2O. Yeah, it's the pain reliever. All the stuff makes
And
your
that's the
car
same
go
stuff
fast.
that goes into your car.
Yeah, and also John uses it when he uses the whipped cream. You know, the whipped cream bottles that you've seen him with those.
And look at him. Vanessa gets a pen out.
He's got the pen
Straight
out.
up.
This is a
As soon as
true-
you
this
mentioned
is true.
Because guess what the propellant is for whipped cream?
John.
Nitrous.
And
nitrous,
2O.
N2O.
All right.
That's the
Did you
propellant.
hear about the fitness model? And this is a real shame. She was using one of those compressed gas whipped cream things. She didn't empty the gas properly. She unscrewed it and actually killed herself.
Oh,
What
no.
the hell?
Yeah. And you know the funny thing is as well too, like
There's a funny
Wait,
thing.
no. What?
no, what I mean funny as in bizarre is that
Yeah.
the day before she went, you know what, guys, you've just got to cherish life. You never know, when your day's going to be up.
Oh,
She said that
God.
literally the day before. Beautiful
Hang on, how
French
did someone?
model.
So, I'm good.
So those guns, they used is it compressed air that they use? I don't know.
Are we
what
talking
it
about
is.
whipped
Depends
cream?
on which
cream.
gun.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
them
whipped
ones
cream.
where you put the gas bulb
Yeah,
in.
the gas.
It's N2O.
It's
The
N2O,
bulby.
yeah. And she didn't empty the gas out of it properly, and so she unscrewed the cylinder, like the top of it, and it blew off and hit her in the either in the neck or in the
Oh,
head.
that's messed up, man. And that propellant is N2O.
N2O.
Yeah.
Evil bloody stuff.
Oh, people use it as whipped cream goes into, I hate to say it, but you wouldn't believe this, but into sexual behaviours, and the gas also contributes to the euphoria with the sexual performance. That's why whipped cream's used. You ever heard that term, you use whipped cream? Well, that's because the propellant gives you that
Sure, it
euphoria.
tasted good. But
Do you know?
Shaving
I'm
cream
40 now. I'm
sucks.
too old for that stuff.
But hang on. So what are you saying?
Well, when you use
Wait,
whipped
how much
cream...
whipped cream do you use? Like, do you engorge
Have you
yourself?
been watching
Have
this
you
50
tied- are you
Shades of
tied
Grey,
down?
Steve?
So you're talking about being tied down with someone just forcing whipped cream into all your orifices enough for you to get a laughing gas effect.
For what I've read on the internet,
What I've read on the internet. Well, I use this.
Well, my
site.
research. Yeah.
whipped cream on someone, the gas is released and you get the euphoric thing as well as the
Cream.
whipped cream effect. So it's a double
Goodness.
whammy effect.
Double
Don't
whammy.
look surprised. you
Double
guys don't.
whammy.
I don't know what you're
Who's
talking
your
about.
friend?
Yeah.
Gone.
Well, you talked about nitrites before, NO2.
Yes.
And
let's
O2
get that.
minus, technically. What would happen if you took the minus off? You end up with nitric dioxide or nitrogen dioxide gas.
So that's what's in our arteries.
No, nitrogen dioxide. That's monoxide.
Oh.
One oxygen. Mono means one. Di means two. Just for the
Right.
chemistry. So if it's nitrogen dioxide, that's a gas that you make from cooking with gas on the stove.
Yeah.
And it's quite toxic and bad for asthmatics.
It's like monobrow and Diane, which is two ands.
Of course it is.
What the?
That's about as sciencey as I get.
That's science.
Yeah, do you like that? That's
you know,
science.
if you ride a tricycle, how many wheels has it got?
3,
What about a quad bike?
4,
Right. How many muscles are
remember
there
my
in a
joke.
quadriceps?
4.
Right. So that's the asthma one. NO2 is the asthma one. And you ever heard people...
So that's nitrogen dioxide.
Yeah, and remember when there was that storm in Melbourne and it caused a lot of asthmatic deaths recently? There's a coroner's inquest
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
Nitrogen dioxide is the chemical produced from lightning because
Yeah.
it fuses nitrogen with oxygen. And you get nitrogen dioxide gas, and that causes asthma and
And
kills
how does
people.
it do it? Is it through?
It's through chemical bonding through the absolute energy of the electric...
No.
of the-
How does nitrogen dioxide cause asthma? Is it through inducible nitric oxide synthase contributing to inflammation,
Absolutely.
and then the neuronal nitric oxide synthase contributing to the spasm?
Exactly right. That's exactly
so
what
just
happens. to the lungs.
overloading when you
Yeah.
overload someone with a available nitrogen, it can just indiscriminately go and induce nitric oxide actions, which can aggravate inflammation and spasms and cramps and twitches.
Exactly.
So you got to control this stuff and not just indiscriminately throw shit in.
And that's what lightning does, and it causes that, and it releases pollen and all sorts of things. The other thing
It
about
releases
nitrogen,
Poland.
Poland.
I thought that was Germany.
Yes.
They never did that. By the way.
Oh dear.
No, what did you say? It releases pollen.
Pollen from thing. So what happens is that you know what thunder is? Does anyone know what thunder is here?
The
What
noise
causes
from
thunder?
lightning.
Yeah, it's lightning because the heat is causing the air to heat up so much. It rises so fast because heat rises, breaks the sound barrier, and that's what thunder is.
Is that right?
Did you want to know that shit?
I knew it was the sound from lightning. I didn't actually
It's-
know how the lightning makes
It's
a
the
sound.
same thing as the
But
crack
if I'm not
of a
around
whip.
to hear it,
Yeah,
did it
crack of a
happen?
whip.
It's the end of the whip actually breaking the sound barrier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool, eh?
The sound barrier, it's only about 1,000 kilometres an hour. The sound barrier, it's not that. You can fly
Is
a
that
plane faster than that.
300? Yeah, right.
Well, that's where you get Mach. Mach
Yeah,
1,
Mark
Mach
1.
2.
Mark 1 and Mark
So
2.
it's 330
Mach.
meters per second, which is why if you count every 3 seconds you count is 1 kilometer.
Roughly. That's
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool, eh?
It is.
I love that little shit. So nitrites is what's found in the preserved meats and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And that's what causes the sweats and
NO2
the migraines
minus,
and all
yep.
that sort of thing. So we see now that when people talk about nitrogen retention, people talk about nitric oxide and say this is the best for stimulating nitric oxide. This is our best product for nitrogen retention. It's going to cause you the most muscle. We now know when someone tries to sell us a product based purely on nitrogen retention, we can go back and look at the studies and see. Let's see if we can see some evidence of changing on lean muscle mass. Because if they're just talking about nitrogen retention and not talking about changing of lean muscle mass, they may just as easily be talking about you haven't yet excreted those amino acids or the ammonia made from them.
Exactly right.
It doesn't actually mean that you're building muscle because people say that it does unless you can see that data.
And it's ammonium retention,
And when
not
someone
nitrogen.
says this is the most potent vasodilator, this product is a precursor for nitric oxide, and it is the best. According to the studies, we get more nitric oxide production than anything. You want to know what type of nitric oxide and how is it controlled? Are we looking at vasodilation? Are we looking at improved performance? Or are we looking about aggravated inflammation? And that sort of stuff. So we need to look at other aspects. Now we know that science can be used to sell a product. They can make these claims and then link it to something. We now know how to be a little bit smarter.
Well, I thought we were going the other way. The fact that we're now basing a lot of research and information on memes is terrifying because it went down from abstracts. Now we're going backwards.
No,
It
people used
literally
to-
is idiocracy. And the original beef that I really had when I saw it and I understood it, and I've mentioned it before in some of the earlier podcasts, so our earlier listeners, would already be understanding this scenario I'm putting forward. But the whole rort around using arginine as a nitric oxide, when you went back to the paper that they were all quoting from, they said they were putting in 5 grams of arginine into a pre-workout and saying because of this extract, it's been proven arginine creates nitric oxide. It was not 5 grams, it was 20 grams, and it was given intravenously, but that information was left off.
Yeah.
And that's a very basic understanding of it. Something that I could read and go, hang on a minute, you're not telling the whole truth. But the levels and the complexities around science, the opinions of people, these things are scary, these things are not, bent on their views and what have you. This is where we're now, and the attention span of a gnat, this is where science is getting really adulterated. It's getting really manipulated.
And they're not, and that mainly because a lot of us haven't got a good grip on the basics before we move into the elite level. Now, people want to jump straight into that expert level, but not having a good grip and understanding of the basics. Because, like I was saying, a lot of people are too embarrassed to ask. A lot of people build their whole stake, their egos and reputations and everything on knowing these things, and they can't. Like, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Correct.
And it's a big point, and that's why it's cool for us to have a forum like that. People can send people can send in the dumb questions that they were too embarrassed to ask someone face to face as an anonymous thing, and we can actually answer it for you on here and teach you the background and how to actually use it. And there's so many little bits of gold information, that things that we say or we may have forgotten or we assume people know. Steve-O mentioned something earlier. I said, what happens when we have magnesium citrate and it goes into the stomach? You get magnesium and citric acid. And Steve-O said, don't worry about the acid component because it's sitting in a pit of acid.
Yeah.
So we've got this whole world talking about alkaline foods and acid foods. And Steve-O just said, well, actually, when you eat it, it's going to sit in a pit of acid. So what's that mean, Steve-O? It's like...
There's acid, H pluses everywhere.
So this whole alkaline and acid food, tell us quickly what's that based on. I know where they come up with it, by burning the food, turning it to powder, adding it to water and measuring its pH.
That's it.
But what are they measuring when they're measuring its pH in this powdery, watery...
They're measuring the cations and anions ratio.
So they're measuring the different sides of your periodic table?
How many of...
is that what he calls it?
Them, them compared to them.
Yeah.
Now, them could be like a phosphate, which is a 3 minus 1, and you could have 3 positives to 1 to
But
one.
people in
these things
radio
are
land
going
is pointing
into
to one
acid.
side.
Yeah.
The
So
base versus the acidic.
He's showing the
Exactly.
periodic table and showing that when they're measuring acid or alkalinity of a food, powder...
Yeah.
They're basically measuring anions and cations and determining whether it's got more potential to be acid or more potential to be alkaline.
Absolutely.
There is no consideration that it's landing into a pit of acid in the stomach, and there's
Not at
no
all.
consideration it's absorbed to the
Digestion.
liver, where it has functional effects. And
It's the most dodgy measurement I've ever seen. Because, people
but it
say
doesn't
acid...
make sense in regards to the human body.
No.
It's fine if you are trying to find a source of hydrogen or whatever, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
But it makes nothing. It's no sense in the human body.
Because an apple is alkaline forming according to those charts, but in the gut,
Yeah.
it forms these beautiful acids: butyric acid, propionic acid, valeric acid.
But if you have a look at the digestive tract as one long tube,
Yeah.
you put these foods into the stomach, into a pit of acid.
Yeah.
As the acid comes out of the stomach and hits the duodenum hates acid.
Yeah.
It sends a message to the pancreas saying, pump out your stuff with a heap of that bicarb,
Yeah.
which we've talked about as the alkalizing thing to neutralize the acid. The more acid coming out of the stomach, the more bicarb comes from the pancreas. It's just, and then you need to be alkaline and then get acid again. It's like,
And you wonder why we all fart, because bicarb, acid, goes into the bowel, comes out the bowel.
as
Fart.
carbon dioxide and water.
Well, just carbon dioxide and
That's like a shark.
and hydrogen sulfide if you had too much sulfur containing amino
Grant,
acids. That's
Grant
called
must live on sulfur containing.
Yeah,
I
and
got a
that's-
feeling
I always
that
think
Grant.
of the Thunderdome whenever I think of Grant.
I got a feeling that Grant is actually hiding and stealing sulfur-based amino acids and sticking them into his rectum and holding them.
Well, it's the nickname of H2S gas is rotten egg gas, and it's exactly.
Also known as Grant.
We
gas.
used to, in chemistry, we used to get zinc chucked in an ice cream container of sulfuric acid, which forms H2S gas, and stink out the room, and everyone have to leave in high school chemistry. We were so mature back then.
Yeah.
But we were
You're
just
using
doing
your
chemistry.
powers for evil.
What about these guys that managed to make nitric acid and then mix it with glycerol?
Oh.
So what's glycerol?
Yeah,
Just a
that's
nice
me.
sugar?
Yeah.
And you get nitrogen from all these things, and
Nitric
you can convert
acid,
it to nitric acid via the peroxynitrites and superoxides, all this sort of crap.
Yeah.
And if you get, is that something right? Nitric acid mixed
Plus
with
glycerol.
just jam that together.
No,
and what do you make?
Nitrogen and glycerin.
Nitroglycerin.
Oh my gosh, so it's an explosive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking at just getting glycerol sugar, just sugar, glycerin, and nitric acid. That's how they actually make nitroglycerin. You can either combust that under heat and it'll explode.
Nitric acid is cool because when you add it with toluene, you get trinitrotoluene.
TNT.
That's exactly what I was thinking. What's that?
TNT.
What's TNT?
Yeah, but not for the
Oh,
people
right.
that
Oh, sorry.
thingy.
It's dynamite.
Yeah.
TNT.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
there we go. Oh my goodness.
It's just so people remember it.
Yes.
It's dynamite.
He's
Yeah,
pulled
that's
out his little red plucker.
so basically, we're looking at these things going, yeah, man, we can easily just manipulate. Let's design a protocol where we're going to load you up on the nitrates and everything like that, and then we're going to load you up on the glycerin to actually
But what will
sneak
happen
around with
inside
them.
the body with that? Obviously, it's not going to.
You can't make it in your stomach. I don't
What,
think.
nitroglycerin?
Can you make nitroglycerin in your stomach?
No, it's hydrochloric acid. There's no nitrogen there. You wouldn't. And even trinitrotoluene and nitric acid and glycerol, those sort of things, they're harmless in the body.
Yeah.
Nitroglycerin is not dangerous. It's a vasodilator.
Yeah, but I could actually, using science, I could actually sell you a product, and I could use science to basically tell you that you are making nitroglycerin in your body.
Yeah,
and you are now dynamite.
You are dynamite.
You know what I mean? So this
Absolutely.
is the reason why I'm saying it is because using basic science methodology, I could basically show you multiple chemical reactions, and I could make a bullshit story that you're going to make nitroglycerin in your body.
See, I'm a chemist.
Explode.
I'm a chemist and a naturopath.
Yeah.
So the worlds meet. They do.
And that's the big point, because we got chemistry, which is your organic chemistry, basic rules for the whole world of the world, the interactions between the whole world. With our human body, we have so many different systems running at once. We have our own microbiome, we have our livers, we have all these different processes. That means we can use basic chemistry to explain some things or to hypothesize things, but when you add them in the body, it's totally different. You've really got to look for bioefficacy, you've got to look at these studies and understand what they're doing, and have a good grip of the basic science if you want to be quoting from medical journals.
Turmeric, black pepper.
Don't
do that again.
And the thing is that I am still amazed how many times I hear that and see that come up. Oh, I love your product, but
Well,
how come it doesn't have black pepper? It's like, my gosh.
No, the funny one.
And I just, do you guys listen to my
Yeah.
podcast where I say that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets a chance to get its pants on? It is so ingrained into people now.
What about the funniest one now? We've got this massive theme coming through. I've got to try to just stop. Hang on, because I'm going to get the giggles and I won't be able to finish my sentence. So, our gut ride product is designed to control the microbiome in the lower part of the bowel. So we're getting a little bit of criticism because there's medical world out there saying that polyphenols are a load of shit. They can't possibly work because they're not bioavailable. All they do is just run straight through the bowel. And we go, that's what we want. We actually want our polyphenols in the bowel because that's where they work. I don't want them absorbed in your mouth and your stomach and not getting to the lower bowel.
That's
that's the
insane,
whole.
isn't it?
And now they're saying none of it works because of that. And I will tell you
That's
more
great.
about it.
We
That's
just
a
showed
big
them
story.
She showed them that picture of the guy that suffered from rosacea for I don't know, a decade and hasn't been to go outside, and within the space of a week it completely cleared up. The hundreds of testimonials we've got now with
The
everything
pain.
from dysbiosis and
So it's psoriasis, rosacea, the pain ones, the pain ones are full on.
and still a lot of people are saying that there is no such thing as IBS. It's all in their head. I
Yeah.
mean, like, and this is the thing, right? So it comes down to the mode of science that you're looking at. Now, whether you're a doctor or a PT or a nutritionist, dietitian, everybody has their bent, you know, in terms of the way that they look at things. But arguing really is pointless. Discussion is where it's at.
Yes.
Like,
Parallel thinking.
I work with, you know, obviously Mark, who's a chiro, the very, very smart guy. But yet he's looking at all other sorts of, we were talking before about MSTs. You know, do you treat the muscle or the bone? I believe treat both. I mean, osteos obviously naturally do that as well too, because the body is holistic. It's not compartmentalized. So if you can learn from someone who's an expert in one field and someone else who's an expert in one field, and you can actually see where they marry up, as opposed to what seems to happen a lot, specifically in Western medicine, but not always. I mean, you can get PTs, you can get anybody who's got a staunch view that goes, X plus Y has proven that this, and anything that's not this, I'm going to discount altogether. And the problem is that you can never win an argument.
No.
Never. You can never win. Because even if you win, the other person will resent you and you won't go forward with it.
That's exactly right.
So you can be right. So I like the saying, you can be right in your own mind, where you're possibly wrong, or you can look at what gets results.
That's exactly right. Result driven. That's what.
And that's why we keep
evidence-based.
talking about bioefficacy is more important than bioavailability, because if you look in the hierarchy of science, the first thing they do is they do these analysis and say, hey, is there anything here that looks like it might be promising? So meaning that they do bioefficacy studies. They see people that eat these foods get this good result. And then they do a further study to take away some variables to say, is it really that food that's giving them that result? Yes, it is. The next step is, how does it do that? What's the mechanism of action? And then the first step they do is bioavailability studies. And then if the bioavailability study shows that it's not very bioavailable, meaning that it's not being absorbed quickly, like within an hour, that's what they're typically looking for, fast absorption, systemic delivery, they say it can't possibly work.
So then
it's
they...
just not that, so it works, I've proven it, so I assume it works, I hypothesize it works, I've confirmed it works, I think it works this way. Oh, it doesn't work the way I thought.
Baby out with the bathwater.
It can't bloody work.
There we go.
And
I've thrown
like,
it in. The baby goes out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually rethinking,
and go,
okay, maybe the mode of
doesn't
action's
work that
different.
way. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, it's not getting absorbed to those areas. It doesn't work that way. Let's have a look at where it is found and what is it doing.
According to that thought, acidophilus does nothing.
No.
Doesn't get absorbed.
No,
There's fibre.
but what would
Throw
happen if you
fibre.
made acidophilus bioavailable?
You
Like it is
die.
for people with HIV.
Yeah, you die.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be in the
Acidophilus
blood.
kills people with HIV because it's still an infecting bug.
Yeah.
It's just that normally it doesn't get into our bloodstream because our immune system nails it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And when you've got HIV, or I should be more technically
Or
correct,
AIDS.
AIDS, you've
Yeah.
got progressed to AIDS, and you can get candida growth in your mouth, and
You can die
get
of
acidophilus
candida and
growth.
everything.
All those opportunistic bacteria just grow nuts because there's no immune system.
Right.
So they just, and then you die of a cold or an acidophilus or something, anything.
Crazy, huh?
Terrible.
That's what we're talking about.
Nothing.
That's awesome.
We've run out of time.
Talking about Freddie Mercury, weren't we?
He
How
sucks.
he
He's
passed.
awesome.
Yeah, no, he is awesome, but I
He's the best.
taught him
seen the
everything
movie.
he knows.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt and Steve. That
Yep.
was a good podcast.
It was good.
Well,
No,
if we
thank
say
you.
so ourselves. No.
I say so.
I say so.
And we'll be
Good
back.
enough to copy.
Yeah, good.
Doesn't stop. Oh, mate. Well, they say copying is the best form of flattery, but get your own voiceover person. You
And
bug.
get your own periodic table too.
Yeah. No, well, it's not your periodic
I
table.
suppose I didn't
Periodic
invent it.
table, but ours does have the element of surprise added to
It does too, doesn't it?
Thanks, guys. We'll be back next week with some more.
All right. See you later.
1, 2, 3.